Hi and welcome everyone! Today I will guide you through my favorite preps for leg behind the head postures. So if you're interested, keep watching! For the first one, you start out lying on your back and then you bend your left knee and bring your right leg across your left thigh just below your knee. Then through a rotation out of your hip, you try to drive your right knee back so that your lower leg gets parallel. You do not want to feel pain in your right knee at any point. Now if you want to, you can raise your left leg and bring your knee closer to your chest. You bring your left knee as close as possible in order to intensify the stretch on the outside of your right leg. Make sure that you're not feeling any pain at any time in your right knee. If you start feeling your knee, then back off a little bit. You can protect your right knee a little bit by flexing your right foot. Stay in this position for a couple of minutes and then change to the other side. For the next one, I like to start out of a downward facing dog. Then I bend my right knee and bring it close to the outside of my mat so that my lower leg gets diagonal onto the ground. So your right knee is not in between your hands but is pointing to the outside, is at the outside of your right hand. From there, you start lowering your hip. Make sure that your hip stays parallel to the ground, so you do not want to shift your weight over to the right side, but really stay in the middle with your hip. It doesn't matter if your hips are further up in the beginning. At some point you will get down to the ground. If possible, you can lean forward and just relax in this position. I also advise you to stay in pigeon pose for a couple of minutes and then you change to the other side. Now, this version of the pigeon pose is a progression of the previous one, so you really want to be absolutely comfortable in pigeon pose before you start off with this one. I again start in a downward facing dog and then I take a big step forward with my right leg, but I step diagonal so my right foot gets onto the left side, so next to my left hand. And then I try to drop my knee to the right side, that my lower leg and my upper leg build a 90-degree angle. You've got to be very careful with this position, and of course you should not feel any pain in your knee at any time. If this is not comfortable in your knee, then you better back off and work on the previous version. When you're working on the previous version, you can slowly start increasing the angle so that you one day finish at 90 degrees. And make sure that your hip stays parallel to the ground here as well, so do not shift your weight over to the right side. If possible, you can start leaning forward in this version as well. Make yourself comfortable. You will lie down onto your leg, and I would suggest also in this version to stay for a couple of minutes and then to change sides. For the seated figure 4, you start in a seated position and then I rotate my right thigh out of my hip. So make sure that you're not moving out of your knee joint. It always helps me a little bit if I lift up my right hip to really access this hip joint. And then I try to bring my leg to the back and up so that my lower leg gets close to my upper body. Of course, you do not want to feel any pain in your knee again. And you want to try to also sit as upright as possible. So do not curve your back too much and try to elevate your spine and bring your chest up. In this position, you do not only want to work on bringing your lower leg as close as possible to your chest, but also to bring your toes higher up. Again, when you do this, make sure that you're not moving out of your knee joint. Most of the movement is really coming out of your hip. I really like to hug my leg here. And if you want to, you can also rock with your hips a little bit from left to right to again open up your hip joint a little bit. Again, starting in a seated position, you're rotating out of your hip joint, and first you push your knee to the back. And then you try to lift up your lower leg as well and try to bring your foot to your ear. So this is really crucial for the leg behind your head postures. You rotate out of your hip and you push your knee to the back. You really have to open your hip joint, and that will help you then also to bring your leg behind your head. When you're working on this, again, make sure that you're working with a relatively straight back. So do not bend forward to get your foot to your ear. Try to stay as upright as possible. This next exercise does really focus mostly on pushing the knee back and opening the hip joint to the back, so to say. I place my lower arm at the sole of my foot and then I start pushing my foot backwards. Make sure that your knee doesn't flare to the right side in that case when you have the right leg, but it rather is really pointing to the back. I made the experience that when I'm letting it flaring to the outside, I start getting troubles with my knee. So also be very careful with your knee in this position. Of course, your upper body stays as upright as possible. And if you want to, you can also start reaching forward with your left hand. But again, try to stay upright when you do this. The next one is really an advanced posture, and I advise you to do this only when you're already quite far with the other exercises. In a seated position, you bend your left leg and bring it into a 90-degree angle, and then you stack your right leg in the same manner above it. You want to make sure that your right heel or foot is above your left knee and that your right knee is above your left foot. So you're forming a little triangle with your legs stacked above each other. It is completely normal if there is a gap between your knee and your foot. With time, this gap will get smaller. Do not push on your leg, so just let this sink, and really over time this position will work and get better. It is essential that you really bring your knees and your feet above each other, so do not allow your knees and feet to be apart from each other. If you do feel comfortable in this position, you can also start leaning forward. As with all of the other exercises that I showed you, you should stay some time in this posture. Another thing that you can do, and I like actually to do in this posture, is to add a twist. So you can twist on both sides and try also here to get as low as possible with your upper body. Of course, you should stay on each side for a couple of breaths, and then you change to the other side with your legs. So these were the exercises and postures that helped me to get my leg behind my head. I hope they will help you too. And if you found this video helpful, then I would appreciate if you could give it a thumbs up. And do not forget to like this channel to not miss out on any other content that I provide. For now, I say Servus!